The purpose of this program today, of this press conference, is to highlight the issues that are important as it pertains to safe storage and gun safety in the state of Georgia. I'm State Senator Emanuel Jones, representing the 10th District, and I had the opportunity to chair the Safe Storage Committee this summer. And I just want to discuss it this hearing, some of the findings that we have from our Safe Storage Study Committee. And I also want to emphasize the importance of this body this year taking action. There have been a lot of suggestions, particularly with members of the House, on what we can do as a body. But one thing that I do know is doing nothing is not an option. So I am glad to have Heather and the groups at Moms Demand Action joining us today for this press conference. The question that we had our study committee is, what can Georgia do? And I just want to share with you two things that I think are critical, and others will share the same in terms of what we can do as a legislative body and what we can do in our great state. We've heard some of the remarks by our governor, we heard some remarks by our lieutenant governor, and we've also heard remarks by our speaker and even our superintendent of schools. Governor Kemp says he wants to give money to the school system. Well, I'm going to show our governor a way that he can spend that money so that it will benefit Georgia, certainly as it pertains to reducing the number of pediatric deaths in our great state. One of the things that we highlighted during the study committee is that Georgia has the 8th highest rate of unintentional shootings by children in the United States. And I hope that kind of sinks in with members that are present here today. And it should also be stated that that the highest incident of pediatric deaths in Georgia is caused by unintentional gun shootings. To me, those numbers are just staggering and really unacceptable. And Georgia can do better. And I said Georgia can do better because there's two things that I'm asking our great state to do during this legislative session. Here with me is bills that we are filing today, and these are bills that should address a lot of the concerns as it pertains to children gaining access to guns. And I would also share that members here today will share other ideas that we plan to introduce as well. The first bill that I want to talk to you about is a bill that deals basically with creating a statewide database. Governor Kemp in his remarks said he's spending in excess of $20 million. The priority, in our opinion, should be devoting some of that money on creating a statewide database where the rules are being promulgated by DOE, our Department of Education, so that we can identify those kids within our school systems, and there's 180 of them in our great state, that need essential services, and that kids can be identified that have problems in a particular school system to ensure that those problems do not carry forth into any other school system in our great state. To me, that is just the bare minimum that Georgia should do as it pertains to gun safety. The other issue that I would like to discuss deals with creating a statewide czar position. And of course, this position would be subject to funding, so I'm calling on Governor Kemp and the legislative body to allocate funds to fund a statewide czar position. This is not anything new as it pertains to gun safety. As a matter of fact, the states of Texas has been doing this for well over 20 years. North Carolina, Utah, and even other red states have a position very similar to this in their legislative branch, and even in North Carolina, they have a position similar to this underneath the Department of Juvenile Justice. That's why we're here today. This person, this czar, as I call it, will have responsibilities to disseminate information through to all of our schools, K through 12. This person will have the responsibility of working with industry and defining best practices. And this person will have the responsibility of working with the legislatures to ensure that as we move forward, that we are focusing on those issues that are critical in ensuring the safety of our kids throughout our school system. So those are the two bills that I plan to introduce, and I'm going to ask if other members of our group will join me in discussing some of the issues that we deem critical to providing for the safety and care of children in our school system. Please.
Thank you so much, Senator Jones, and thank you for your leadership on the study committee this summer, and thank you to the leaders of our Senate for appointing this study committee to talk about this difficult issue. Our state is, particularly in Barrow County, of course, but parents all across our state and school children all across our state are still grappling with the fallout from the tragic mass shooting at Appalachia High School last year. And so far, we have heard a lot of discussion about additional funds to harden public schools. And that discussion needs to be had. But one thing that must be pointed out is that all the hardening in the world would not have stopped the tragedy at Appalachia High. You can make it a fortress, a school a fortress, and the young middle schooler who brought a gun to school and ultimately died after shooting herself at her middle school in Cobb County just this year in 2025, all the hardening in the world isn't gonna stop that, y'all. Most of these shootings are sadly done by people who are a part of the community, and they are expected to be in the building. And it just gets more and more glaring with every single tragedy. The refusal to talk about other parts of the equation that are necessary for any solutions. And so I commend Senator Jones for putting the issue of the very, very easy access to guns that we have here in our state. We have one of the weakest states in terms of gun laws. When it is extremely easy to get guns, there will be lots of guns around in the community and people's homes on the street, and you will have more shootings, accidental or on purpose, and you will have more deaths. And we have to talk about that side of it. And guess what? Georgians know. Georgians do not believe the Republicans when they're like, well, I guess we better put some more, some more locks on the doors. I think Georgians know that we have to be honest about what has caused our gun violence crisis and talk about all parts of what we need to do to address it. I've got a couple bills that I want to add to Senator Jones' package. I have filed them all before. One is a safe storage around minors bill that will require locking up guns around children and with a misdemeanor penalty if one knows or should have known that their gun could be easily accessed by a minor and a tragedy ensues. Another is, and this one's more complex, so I won't go on and on. If you want more details, come find me. But in Georgia, we essentially throw people out of the NICS database. We stop submitting their names to the NICS database after 5 years after an involuntary commitment for mental health purposes from someone who has been adjudicated a danger to themselves or others. That is not a safe practice to just simply stop sending the names. Also, it conflicts. It is against federal law because having been involuntarily committed due to being a danger to oneself or others is a bar for gun ownership unless you've been through a hearing process. So this legislation, which has almost made it to the finish line many times, working with the GBI and others, would simply set up that hearing process as opposed to summarily just not submitting the names anymore without further inquiry from folks who may be a danger to themselves or others. We also will have one, again, as a caucus that would close our domestic violence loophole wherein misdemeanor domestic violence convicts are still legally capable of holding guns here in Georgia, which we know is incredibly dangerous, and domestic violence being a huge problem and cause of death, and most typically it is with a weapon. So those are the 3 bills I want to highlight real quick for you all, and thank you.
I think Georgians are ready for a change as far as this, how we talk about the gun issue. It started over the summer with the study committee that Senator Jones were actually able to chair. That was a big deal to actually have a Senate study committee actually look at this particular issue of safe storage. And it's continuing now with these bills that we have here. And quite frankly, these bills that are here that are firmly supported by the Democratic caucus is one that covers so many different issues. And that's exactly how it should be. Whether we're talking about safe storage, whether we're talking about creating a czar, it basically covers a lot of different areas as far as gun safety is concerned. As a former prosecutor, I'm extremely interested in the fact that now we would actually be able to help domestic violence survivors as far as their abuser having access to weapons. That is also going to be something that we're going to be pushing hard for. All of these bills are part of a general package that actually is going to keep Georgians safe. And I believe that Georgians are ready for a change. They're tired of not talking about this issue. That was shown with that study committee and the support that study committee had, and they're ready to do some action. So the Georgia Democratic Caucus is ready to get going and ready to do some action on this particular issue. And we think we got some good bills here that can pass. And even if they do not pass this particular year, we'll get them done next year. But we're going to push hard. There's no doubt about it. We're going to be pushing hard to get this legislation passed because it's to protect the state, our citizens, and to protect Georgians. Thank you so much.
Senator Kemp first.
Yeah.
We have one of our freshman senators who I'm going to ask to come up and just share his experience. Senator Kemp.
Yeah, I just want to thank Senator Jones for his leadership on this issue. As a former high school principal, I just want to give a little more perspective as to the importance of the bill in which schools will communicate with each other. As a high school principal, we all know that it's important to get information about our students' academics, but also it's even more critically important to ensure that we are getting information as to issues and concerns that schools have had with their students. It is critically important for all parents to know that their children are in safe environments. And as a former educator who had a student bring a gun to school, having information shared between schools is critically important. It can't just stop at academics. So these, I know it's become a term that is used a lot, but truly common sense reforms to ensure that our children are safe in our schools. We all want to know that our children are safe and our educators are safe. So I'm very excited to support these bills, and I know that we can do more in the state because our parents are demanding that we do more to protect our students and our teachers in our school buildings. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm State Senator Gail Davenport, and we just have to do something about these school shootings and something about gun violence. You can go anywhere and just buy a gun. And so my mother and my sister were both retired teachers, and they were there to teach children, not to police, and to make sure that people did not bring guns to school. We have to put forth legislation and to make sure that we stop this gun violence. You know, when I was years ago, when I was working the night shift right here in Atlanta, Georgia, I was attacked from behind, and the gentleman pulled a gun out, and it just scared me. Now, we have so many persons that I lived, but we have so many seniors now who called every day and afraid to go to the grocery store, afraid to get out. So we have gun violence all around. So we're going to do something about this gun violence and stop it right now. So I applaud Senator Jones, Emanuel Jones, for having this study committee and fighting for the stopping gun violence here in the state of Georgia and across this nation. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Heather Hallett, and I am the organizer for Georgia Majority for Gun Safety. We are a coalition of all the various advocacy groups in the state of Georgia who are advocating for changes to Georgia law to promote a responsible culture of gun ownership here in Georgia and promote gun safety. I want to thank Senator Jones so much for initiating the Safe Storage Study Committee over the summer. And the bottom line is that the majority of Georgians, and we are a coalition of Democrats, Republicans, gun owners, people who don't own guns, lots of doctors and clinicians, parents, regular people, the majority of people in Georgia support common sense legislation like child access prevention laws. We know that safe storage saves lives, and there are bipartisan actions that we can take in the state to promote a culture of responsible gun ownership. I applaud Senator Jones again on advocating for funding to promote things like safe storage education. Firearms are the #1 cause of death in children and teens in Georgia, and there are bipartisan actions that we can take, and I just applaud all of the legislators who are up here in taking action and welcome the rest of the legislature to join the majority of Georgians who know that there are things that we can do to solve this problem.
Thank you. That concludes our press conference. Are there any questions that our group can answer? Please join me.
Right there.
Yes. I'm sorry, I can't hear you. Can you come a little bit closer, please? That's an excellent question, by the way. The question was, how do you address the privacy concerns with children from parents when their privacy, that data may be shared when they go to another school system? I would simply say that when a child transfers to another school system, there's already a package that follows them. As part of that package, the incoming school system is obliged to accept that child. And I don't see any privacy concerns that should be addressed or could even possibly be that big of a concern when it comes to a child needing medical attention, needing quality care that they may have received at their previous school system. And I would hope that the parents would expect that their child will continue to receive that same quality of care at the incoming school system. So I do not see that as a privacy concern. I see it more as a safety concern. And as I've already said, there's a lot of data in our school system that follows children when they transfer already. Thank you. Well, I can tell you the Republicans that I've spoken with have expressed an interest in the 2 bills that I've introduced. I'm not going to call any names because when you have those tenuous relationships and that tepid support, I'm certainly not going to do anything to discourage any of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle from joining with us in this discussion and certainly joining with us in helping us promote this legislation. Our goal is to pass legislation. That's what our goal is. And as our minority leaders already mentioned, our minority chair, we're willing to work with anybody, and we will continue to do that in working with anyone that has an interest in this. And I pray that all of the legislators in this great body already should have an interest, considering the trauma, if you will, that Georgia has experienced as it pertains to school shootings. I think I saw a statistic recently that already in January, there's been well over 18 high school shootings across the country. The numbers are going up. They're certainly not going down. There's a lot that we can do. It's not going to cost the state that much money. And as I mentioned earlier, this is kind of the low-hanging fruit. This is the bare minimum. But certainly, we're always going to push to do more. Oh, I'm very confident. It's really, those that are serving with me, they will tell you that it's never ever easy for a legislator, particularly a Democratic legislator that's in the minority, to pass legislation up here. But I think my track record and that of those that stand with me speaks for itself. We have passed legislation. Last year I passed Senate Bill 10 that Governor Kemp signed into law that was embraced. Keep in mind, it's not the legislation, it should be ideals that drive a consensus in this body. And I think we've done a good job between the study committee and the press conferences that we've had in presenting ideas that should drive a consensus in this body. And I'm asking all of my colleagues, not just the Democratic colleagues, but the Republicans as well, to look at this idea and base your decision on supporting it or not supporting it on the merits of what you see. And I can share with you that every Republican I've shared this idea with regarding the database and the czar, which is not new to politics in the country, have expressed support for it. Somebody else want to join in, please? I think that's the misdemeanor.
I'm sorry, could you, repeat the? Incentives are, the question is why have it, be a criminal charge? And here's the answer. Incentives are great, and that is another thing that should be discussed. But one of the problems we have that I believe a number of our senators referred to is the sort of culture that we have created here in Georgia of permissiveness and of not having in the forefront a discussion that these are extremely dangerous objects that you don't just treat like you might treat something else. You would expect that everyone would do that, but I can tell you that that's certainly not the case. And when you don't have a charge that results of, and obviously someone, if their child has shot themselves to death accidentally because they got their hands on a weapon, which of course happens hundreds of times across the country and has happened many times here in Georgia just in the last few years, obviously they're probably devastated. But by not saying that is not something that you are legally allowed to do under our state's code, by that not being there, that sends a message. That sends a message, like it's just fine to leave your gun lying around kids. So that, to me, is one of the reasons that it is important to have it stated in Georgia code that it is not legal to leave a gun around minors. And that is not to say that other ways to get at that problem don't have merit. But I do believe that part of our laws, part of what our laws do is they represent our values as a society. And if those laws are so at counter purposes with the way you want people to behave, then you need to look at that piece of it too. And while I'm on that topic, let me just add that, in Georgia, it was not illegal for the Appalachia shooter's father to give his 14-year-old an AR-15. Again, something that really is a bit counterintuitive, but when it's perfectly legal, why would you expect people to not do it? Same logic goes with the safe storage, and thank you for the question.
Thank you. And we have time for one more question, by the way. Yes, ma'am? Let me just ask if you would get with Senator Parent so she can answer that question for you. And let me conclude this press conference. I thank everyone for being here today, even the members on the other side of the aisle with us. Please introduce yourself.
I'm Representative Shay Roberts, State House.
Come on up, Representative. I asked Representative, I also asked Michelle Law to join us. She had a conflict, but there's some legislation they've already introduced in the House as well. Please.
Thank you.
2 minutes, you wrap this up.
I'm Representative Shay Roberts, House District 52, and Representative Au and I have both filed legislation over the last 3 terms probably. I know she has pediatric safe storage as well. I will be dropping the red flag bill again this year. A lot of these things could go in tandem, I truly believe. Monitoring the kids' school records as they transfer, those things showing up, and then being able to go law enforcement or family members to alert schools and to remove guns from the homes. Those are important. And then I'll also be filing another bill about folks being convicted of domestic violence not being able to have guns. To me, that's common sense. The U.S. Supreme Court has passed it, but the states need to file it as well. So I love being able to work with the Senate on these important common sense gun safety bills. These are not crazy. My family has guns locked up at home. I'm not anti-gun, but we have to begin to find ways to protect our kids and to protect our communities. Thank you.
Thank you all for attending, and this concludes our press conference. Moms for Action, I appreciate you guys. Heather, thank you. Thank you all for being here and being part of this press conference today. Thank you.